Hi, this is Tiana from Mayday, the Handmaid's Tale podcast. Justin and Rhea are not here with us this week, so today we've got Sarah joining us for our third week in a row. You might as well be a permanent member for our little gang here.
I'm trying to elbow my way in there.
I know you are. I kind of enjoy it. And we also have Crystal, a friend of mine, who you may have heard on the podcast before when she was interviewed by Justin. You want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Crystal Martin, and I'm the Coder Girl Program Director. So I was on the show talking about an organization that focuses on women in tech. After talking to Tiana about the show and book, I binge watched it on a Saturday, and I am really excited to talk about last night's episode.
Was that your most depressing Saturday ever?
No, it was amazing. I was doing my hair. It was great.
Really?
Deep condition and Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah,
I like
you gotta
it.
do the whole wash
like
day.
It. I know what you're talking about.
Curly girls.
All right, so let's get right into it. We are reviewing episode. Oh gosh, what number are we on? What
it was
episode
episode 8, and it was titled Jezebels.
Flying by,
which is we later find out what that means.
Yeah, this was a very interesting intro. I was kind of disappointed at first.
Really?
I guess.
Why? Yeah, let's talk about your overall opinions first before we dig into
the first few minutes I don't know, was it immediately where we're on Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, but you're kind of a jerk. I don't know if I want to hear your backstory. I don't know if I care enough. I don't know if I care enough about you to spend an episode with you, but it wasn't the whole episode, and that really helped.
That was an issue. Right when we start to dig into Nick's backstory, I'm like, does anybody care about Nick's backstory? I'm not rooting for him
I don't
in
know
any
who
way.
does.
I mean, as Justin says, he's worthless Nick.
Yeah.
So do we care about his worthless Nick
a
backstory?
lot. He is like not with it very well. He didn't even think to ask her name.
He steadily disappoints
Come
us.
on.
Steadily disappoints us.
Very disappointing character.
And true to form, his backstory was also very disappointing and worthless.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could we get like a dead brother or some shocker?
Reason to feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I needed some reason to feel bad for him so I could care, and I didn't get it, so I still don't care about Nick.
I know. And it was pretty disgusting how everything kind of rolled out with him. So
yeah, my whole analysis on Nick was like masculinity so fragile.
Oh,
thank you.
Good point.
That kept coming up in my head when I was thinking about it on my walk after.
Yeah.
Because I like I was telling Tiana before we started rolling, I just have massive anxiety when I watch this show, as I'm sure everybody does. And so I need to find outlets to kind of get rid of some of that extra energy that I feel. And so I was walking post-episode, and I was just stewing about how fragile he was and just...
Yeah. All of the female reassurance he seemed to need.
Yeah.
And, like, making himself feel better by subverting control and then working with these men in power. Yeah. I've been thinking about masculine fragility a lot with the commander, but I totally didn't think about that last night watching the show.
Nick's response
With
was
Nick's
so
story.
bratty. It was like you at a bar in
Yeah.
college, and like the guy that kind of likes you sees you like flirt with another guy and get a drink from him, and he's like, "Oh, you hate me, and I never want to talk to you again." And like you hurt. It's like I just took a drink from a guy. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Right. And then he was all moody with that one Martha, and not now.
yeah.
Not tonight.
Oh, but we'll get into
My
that
feelings.
as we do. But yeah. So overall, you found it disappointing. I
Just
found
the
it.
Nick part.
Yeah, same here.
Jezebels was amazing.
Yeah, Jezebels was incredibly done. Visually, it was really neat. Some of the music was really good. It was a good episode, right? But there were parts where I was like, maybe not. And a little bit of the Moira interaction was a little disappointing for me. I was expecting a little bit of a different thing with how she and Moira interacted. But overall, I liked it, as I do all the episodes. It's incredibly well done.
You want to go in kind of scene by scene?
Right.
Since you two have very good notes. I'm so impressed. You're great students.
Ridiculous.
You're great students. You both get A's.
Yay. Okay, so it opens with Offred awake next to a sleeping Nick, and she's doing the voiceover or the narration, and she says that she wishes her story was different and that she wasn't such a weakling, and that she has dreams that Luke is alive, but a ghost who slips away at daybreak, and she comments that she's forgetting him. And
does she say she has dreams that Luke is alive? Because she just learned he's alive in a prior episode.
Okay,
like just recently.
So maybe like she keeps trying to think about him when they were together, but the memory of him is fading or something along those lines. I kept having to pause during this time because my husband was reading a comic book next to me and he was turning the pages very loudly. So I may not have heard it 100% correctly, and I was trying to subtly hint that he needs to stop turning pages, but he didn't catch it.
He didn't catch it.
Didn't catch it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my boyfriend's trying to catch up, and I was watching it while he was there, and he was just like, la, 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 la. And I'm like, okay, can you go to the other room and do that, please? Can you la, la in another room?
Not okay.
I need to hear
not
every
okay.
word.
You can't ruin it.
No.
But either way, I think the point is that she's forgetting him in a way that is really sad to her, and she just feels like really weak in that she needs to keep running back to Nick and having this little affair, and she knows that it's not a strong part of her and that it's not anything that she's proud of. And it's said in the book, this part is really true to the book, the way that she says it, because I feel like it was almost directly quoted from the book about how she just doesn't really want to think about this time and how she acted, but she did do it, and that's where she is. Kind of an is what it is sort of thing with her and Nick.
I assumed her comments were more of her reflecting on, like, now that she knows that Luke is alive, she's having more guilt about it, and she went back to Nick even after she found out that Luke was alive, and that's got to be hard to grapple with. Yeah. But, for all she knows, this is where she'll be until she dies. Do you know what
she said? She said, it feels good.
Yeah.
She didn't really have a whole lot more to say.
Yeah. She didn't seem to feel, like, concerned about being judged, which I felt a little bit of relief of. Like, let's not dwell on that. I feel like women in society talk about that a lot and worry about that a lot. Let's let this be a situation where it can just stand, because everybody's probably going to die real soon anyway.
Right.
Like, just let it be. It's okay. And I really think in this situation, like, if there is ever a time that it is okay to be sleeping with somebody that you're not married with, this is it. If you are having consensual sex in this world, this is the time that is okay.
Right. And if there's a tiny sliver of anything even vaguely positive in your life, you need to grab it with both
Hold
hands.
Hold on to it.
That didn't mean to sound sexual, but either way, you do need to.
You need to do that
with both hands.
And we talk a lot about everybody kind of grips at the power that what little power they have, especially the women. You know, in Serena Joy, and
because there's so little of it to be had.
Right, that you're just kind of scraping at it, and so even if also it feels good, but also maybe it makes her feel even slightly powerful or even slightly in control of 1%. Of her life.
Well, she does. I mean, she seems to be in control.
She was on top
when they're alone. She seems to be deciding what's happening, and she's always on top. Go awesome. You right? And this is a room where she is in control as long as Serena is not there.
Right.
So, I mean, take what you can get.
Yeah.
There's that. And then we
made a reason to live.
Right. We are human, after all. And don't even get me started about that quote. We'll get there in a second.
At the brothel. Yeah.
Before that, we flash back to Nick during the time that the plans for Gilead were just starting to come together. And he's at a career counseling center called, I think it's something biblical. It has a biblical name.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting what it is. But either way, he can't seem to hold down a job. And he's going back and forth with the counselor. And he gets yelled at by some man behind him in line, as though
he's taken too long.
Right, as though things don't take a long time at career counseling situations. But either way, so they sort of get into like a shoving match of sorts, or maybe he
punches him.
There's a punch. Yeah. Okay, I thought there was a punch.
And then he punches the guy who was working the desk.
Nice.
Behind him.
All right.
That was trying to help him.
Right.
Always a good idea. Yeah.
Well, so apparently that sparked something in his career counselor. Thank you.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. What did you think about that scene, Crystal?
I just thought it was super bizarre. I thought I'm always looking for some type of big reveal or something with Nick, and I thought something was going to like really catastrophic was about to happen right then. And then it was just like, oh, let me help you, son. And I was like, what is this? Like, why are you're this really polished, dapper man working in like this rinky-dink. I was very disconnected. I didn't really understand it.
I felt the exact same way.
I thought the same thing. Like, he seemed too well-educated and nicely dressed and together to be working that job. And I immediately thought, like, I wonder if he's a plant. because this sounds like it was happening at a time like before they took over things. This must have been before the bombings. This is, well before that, because he is just like introducing this idea to Nick of people who want to change things and change the way the government works, I think he might have said. And like maybe he was planted there to like look for people. I mean, this is kind of a blanket term, and I'm not saying that everybody in that particular line was, but like to look for people who might be like really impressionable or a
vulnerable.
Little, yeah.
Right. It's like, because maybe I'm reaching too far, but I'm thinking like,
easily.
I look at Nick and I assume like there's a discussion around his race, but I sort of thought like he's probably like, I assume he's Latino. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if the makers of the show, the authors, were trying to say like, trying to sort of attach him to that theme of like someone who is vulnerable or from a background where they're impressionable because they don't have a lot of resources or help, that this is how you get them.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
like,
a really good
kind of like gangs, for instance, like provide a lot of like community and connection for people. And that's why they join them, not because they really want to kill people.
Terrorist
or
organizations
sell drugs,
work the same way. Yeah. Terrorist organizations in our world right now, not just the ones that built Gilead.
I don't know if that was making sense of like Nick's place and identity in this whole thing.
That's really interesting. They don't address race in this show, weirdly. So yeah, that would be a really interesting take on it.
But maybe
they'll expand a little more on that later.
I don't know.
That's the most sensical explanation that I could think of, because I couldn't see what he saw in Nick. Either way.
No.
Besides a delinquent. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like I just couldn't figure it out. So they go and get coffee, and he talks a lot about how this world is screwed up and there's the sons of Jacob, and maybe there's a job in it for you if you come to one of our meetings. And and so even though the counselor seems to kind of be taking advantage of Nick's vulnerability or Nick's kind of questionable job situation, he still doesn't seem like the type, because he has a little bit of a, like, not defiance in him, but there's the part where he says, idle hands are the devil's work, or he says something like that, and Nick's like, that's not in the Bible. And he's very much like, he doesn't seem like,
I missed that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he totally calls him on it, which shows, that he has some awareness of the Bible, which you would think would be a good thing to a guy trying to recruit people for the Sons of Jacob. But also, like I said, he says it in kind of a way like, don't make that sound like it's in the Bible, because it's not. And then I think, well, he seems a little defiant. I think they'd be looking for somebody a little bit like, oh yes, idle hands.
Complacent.
Idle hands, yeah, like very much more cooperative, and you say things and I just believe you. So that was another part where I was like, so Nick's your guy? You're going to recruit that guy?
Maybe Nick's kind of a blank slate too.
Yeah.
He's kind of unimpressionable.
So what was right after this?
Okay, so then we pan back. So there's that flashback, and then we come back, and the commander is waiting in June's room when she gets back from presumably sleeping with Nick, right?
I couldn't connect that. I didn't know.
Okay,
I wasn't
hard
sure.
to tell.
It did. When she walked in and saw him there, she sure did seem like she was in trouble. Like she thought she was in trouble, which kind of made me think that too. Yeah. But then I was like, I don't understand where we are at right now.
Right. Yeah. She might have just been surprised that he was just sitting in her damn room.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was scared.
Right. Me too.
Yeah. I saw him sitting there and I thought, oh my God, what is going to happen? I was not prepared for the part of the book that this episode turned out to be about. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, what's happening? Are you in trouble?
I thought she was in trouble too. It was really scary. Also, we have to address in this whole scene the face acting on the part of Joseph Fiennes and Elizabeth Moss in this whole awkward
and
interaction.
Samara Wiley later on too.
Oh,
amazing. We gotta. There's surely a real term for this. Somebody on Twitter, please tweet at me. What is the real term for what we've been calling face acting the whole time? Because I feel like that's a thing.
Is it facting? I don't know. Help me.
Twitter, educate us. What is it?
So the commander's waiting in June's room when she gets back, and seems like she's caught. But he ends up. He says that they're going for an outing, and that he's going to shave her legs.
Oh, yeah.
And
creepily.
It was incredibly creepy. And
I did appreciate the explanation for why her legs were shaved in the bath scene before.
We addressed
that. We had talked about that.
We did.
And in the bath scene, because she has to take a bath to clean herself before the ceremony. And there's one scene way earlier on in the series where you see her in the bath and she's talking about it, but her legs are shaved. And I
Right.
was like, no way did they give them razors. Come on.
Right,
How
and she
are her
mentions they
legs
don't
shaved?
give them razors.
She explains.
And she explains it in this episode, finally, that they get like them for very short periods of time, and the Martha waits outside the room to make sure that they don't have the razor alone for very long, just so that they can shave their legs once a month, I would presume, before the ceremony, because we can't possibly, stun the commanders with female leg hair.
No.
Obviously.
Ugh.
But I was so glad to have that explanation, even though I don't buy that they would ever be alone with razors.
So
One moment. That's
One moment, yeah,
all
all it
most
takes.
would need.
right? I would think
In
that
that
the Martha would
situation.
just be in
In
the
the
bathroom
room,
with
right.
her. 'cause-
Wouldn't the Martha want the razor too?
Yeah,
I mean,
actually
come
give
on.
me a razor.
The world
I'll
is
go
pretty
first, then
terrible
you.
for all women.
So he shaves her legs,
Ugh,
which is one
with a
of
creepy
the
look on his face.
many disgusting interactions that they will have in the episode. And then she makes a comment that it seems like he's done this before, and that will, kind of flesh out a little bit more later. But it seems
we know he had a relationship with the previous handmaid because
Exactly.
of the Latin.
so.
Right.
So she
hate him.
comments that it seems like he's done this before. So not only has he had an inappropriate relationship with the handmaid before her, but also he's done this very evening that they're about to have, which is just gross. I wish I could come up with a more eloquent way of saying that, but it's gross.
I said you can't trust him because his eyes are set too close. It's got
His
this,
eyes are set
you
too
can't
close.
trust people like that.
That's how you know?
Yes, I know.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I
That's
just
a pretty broad statement. You
he
gonna
just
stick with it?
can't. I'm sticking with it.
All right.
He's just his face. I just don't trust him.
I appreciate your conviction.
I understand. And then he hands her a makeup box.
Oh, yeah.
With lipstick and blush and things. And
I was extra offended because it was
Yeah.
somebody else's
Well, and so it was somebody else's gross old makeup.
old
Right.
makeup.
Ugh.
and
That
then
stuff is probably
I think it was a
filled with
MAC bullet too.
bacteria.
I think it was an actual MAC lipstick. I might have maybe just saw what I wanted to
I
see.
don't know enough about lipstick to know
Same.
what that means.
And then he watches her put it
Mhm.
on. And I think
super voyeuristic. It was just really strange. Like, that felt super invasive. Even though, clearly they've done more invasive things together. This just felt extra icky.
so awful. The ick factor is
don't know
at
why.
an all-time high in this episode.
I felt technically offended too because I'm like, this is not my color. This is not what I would pick out for myself. I don't have the right concealer,
Right.
no foundation. You just got me putting on some old lipstick.
I was
And
thinking,
some
like,
crusty
would
mascara.
I remember how to do it after a bunch of years
Absolutely
and
remember.
stuff?
I
Well,
will remember.
And he held the mirror, which even in
Yeah, it
that
was
case
weird.
was like, I'm in control.
Yeah.
I'm holding
Oh,
this
yeah.
mirror. You're going to paint yourself like a doll. I'm going to
Mhm.
watch you. Everything about it
She
was
did come out
very...
looking like a doll. Like,
Oh,
it was,
she did.
It was such a stark, drastic
Yeah.
difference. It just felt weird.
And I think he thought he was doing her a favor. I think he thought like she's gonna feel beautiful after
Right.
she does it.
I think he
have,
thinks
like,
that every time he interacts
she's
with her.
thinking
She's gonna
like
feel
this don't
great.
match. I'm irritated. Whatever.
Well, and she has to force on these awful painted smiles because that's what he wants, right? He wants her to go, oh, I'm so beautiful. Oh, thank you
I'm
for
so
taking
excited.
me
Yeah.
out. Yeah, like
It does feel
I'm-
like he wants a thank you all the time.
It is terrible. And the
We'll
facial
talk more about
expressions
that. Yeah.
that he makes are just terrible.
Yeah. It was all of the shots of his face watching her just. Ugh.
And the hair sniff.
Gross.
Do people actually creepily sniff people's hair?
No.
Like why? I felt like you could.
I don't think anybody who's not like a stalker does that.
And her hair don't smell good. It wasn't like she was using
I
Suave,
know.
or like Pantene Pro V.
Yeah, she's
Ivory
not
soap.
using. She's not got the pick of the beauty aisle for
No,
herself.
It was weird.
It's-
Ugh. I could not. Ugh.
Yeah,
And his tone with her, which Justin has addressed in the past, is very creepy.
super creepy.
Talks down to her like she's this
Yeah.
doll that he's dressing up, or just I don't know. I don't have a better metaphor than a doll, but it's really bad.
What did you guys think about the presentation of the outfit and the shoes to her in this scene? It was like a gift, but kind of a horrible
But it was like
one.
wrapped. He didn't even
Yeah.
present it like in a gift. It was like here's a
I
balled
don't
up
think
dress.
he knows. I
Well,
don't think he knows.
And I think he thought again, like, this is pretty. This is what women like. She's gonna put this on
Ugh,
and feel
yeah.
so beautiful and look at me. And he wants this girlfriend experience where he gets to have a wife and then this like fun, sexy affair with a girlfriend, but totally
the
not
girlfriend
taking
is basically he owns her. Like,
right. She's a sexual slave to him. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't just buy her a dress and put makeup on her and shave her legs and totally disregard the fact that she's your
you're a
slave.
prisoner.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that you've
Also, the dress was
ritualistic
used.
raped.
That was not a new dress.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think they are making new things like that.
No.
Anywhere near there.
And they talk about it in the book about how anything that you see that's like costumey like that, or anything even like not what a handmaid or a wife or whatever would wear, is something that they've kind of scrounged from the time before. So
because
it's all...
they destroyed everything in the beginning.
Right.
They were supposed to burn all those things.
Right.
But they did.
But some obviously survived. And to be real, like, there's no way they could have been in every closet, in every house, in every apartment, all over. You know, there are bound to be ones that got missed, or like houses that never got gone through. And, you know, so things like that would still exist, but
they'd be gross.
They're like contraband at this point.
Right.
Well, not only that, but like you said, just kind of just
icky,
roughed up, and not what you would wear, and not anything that would fit you, and kind of something that's been balled up in a closet.
Which is exactly what you want to hear before you put on sparkly 4-inch heels.
Yuck. So he gives that to her, and then he tells her that Serena Joy, so they're going out that night, and he tells her that Serena Joy has gone to visit her mother, and that she won't be back until the next morning. So you get the indication they're going to be out all night, and they'll spend the night in a hotel, and they don't need to be back by any time. And that was a huge thing for me, that Serena Joy gets to have a mother that's alive, that she gets to see.
That there is an old person still in existence. I thought they all went to the colonies.
Right?
I didn't put all that together.
I think we are probably just making that leap because in the book there is more talk about about June, who's not June in the book, missing her mother and wondering what happened to her. And then like Moira tells her that she saw her in a video of of people in the colonies. And so like, at least June knows that she made it there and was alive. And like, then June thinks of her as alive. And then Moira's like, well, she's probably not now because the colonies are cleaning up toxic waste. They all die after a few years of being there. Horrible deaths, probably.
Right, like their skin melts off their face.
There are many allusions in the book toward like anybody older who's not also powerful just gets shipped off to the colonies for terrible rest of their lives.
So I guess as a perk of her position, maybe it's because she's not only a wife, but the wife of one of the top commanders of Gilead. Like, you know, you get a sense later on in the episode just how much Fred, her commander, had to do with everything that happened. So maybe because she's in that, not just social standing of a wife, but the wife of Fred specifically, that she got to like have her mom remain living and in a place where she could visit her.
It seems like a big favor.
Yeah.
I was wondering if her mom is maybe also married to an important person.
Yeah, we were talking about
that. They keep the old important men around, I think.
Okay.
So maybe she's there and then she just doesn't have the same situation. Like there's no handmaid and then they're just old and rich and powerful together. I don't know. Anyway, so they get in the car and they go out and they come to a checkpoint and a security checkpoint, and he has her pull up her hood of Serena's coat, and he keeps saying things like, you know, it's okay, you're with me, and you know, you're so excited, aren't you? And like he keeps saying things
like, even if this were a legit date today between people, what woman would be listening to that and not thinking like, what is wrong with him? Why is he reminding me that I'm having a great time constantly?
Right?
I sort of felt like he was weird, overacting.
Yeah,
like he was like being extra creepy. He's like, okay, we know you're creepy and kind of messed up, but like you're being creepy.
Like that the actor was overacting,
or the actor was overacting. I think he just kind of kept that thing up, and it was like, all right, man, we're at a checkpoint. Just cut it out for a minute. Like, let's get through the.
Nothing was said.
He seemed very creepy on purpose.
Right, like nothing was said without a thick layer of just creep, disgusting.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, and he keeps like, saying things to her about how she should be feeling and what a great time they're having. And then, you know, they pass another gateway where she has to lay down, and because even wives aren't allowed past that point, and she assumes they're going into what was Boston.
Surprised by that, by the way, that there is a limit to where the wives are allowed to go with their husbands. I figured the husbands, if they decided to take anyone wherever, that they would be able to do that if they're a powerful commander.
But I think if it's like a place like Jezebels, then if a guy brought his wife, the other guys would be like, what are you doing, man?
But he says, like, even the wives can't go beyond this point, and they're not at Jezebels yet. That's just when they're entering what she thinks is Boston.
Yeah.
True. But so maybe Boston has just become a place where
Oh gosh, like full of brothels and things.
Yeah,
oh,
just
so
all
depressing.
the stuff that they shouldn't be doing that they kind of still want to be doing, and that could take the form of a brothel or, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
other stuff. Yeah, and
I do have a feeling there would be a lot of things that the wives don't know about that the men are still doing,
or just turning a blind eye to like which women do today. Like they know what they're doing, but they're just like, well, I got status
and a
I'm
place
married,
where they can still get
matter.
things that are illegal now and things like that. They can get their. I don't know what would be illegal.
A huge black market. Yeah. I don't know. So maybe that's why. And anyway, so he's just like, "Ooh, were you scared?" I don't know what he says, but it was extra creepy. And then we flash back to Nick, and this is where it gets really bad. So Nick, this is when he starts becoming a driver for the Sons of Jacob. But again, this is pre-Gilead, like it's pre-society turnover. And there are 2 men, or maybe 3.
It's 3 counting Commander Waterford.
Fred, yeah. So, I call him Fred. We're pretty close.
You're on first name basis now?
No,
okay.
Me and Fred are good.
Well, you should tell him how it is.
I know. I have lots to say to Fred the next time we hang out. But, so he's in a car and there's 3 men, including Fred, and they're talking about what to do about the fertility issue. And I guess they call him Commander Price.
Oh, I didn't catch either of their names. Okay. I was just too grossed out by what they were saying.
Yeah, it was too awful to really focus. But there was one who had white hair, and he seemed to be even higher of ranking than Fred.
The one that had recruited Nick, that guy?
Wasn't the other guy?
I think it was the other guy.
The other guy that seemed a little more crass.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. The one he apologizes for after he gets out of the car.
Yeah, he did seem extra.
Oh. So they start to talk about, that man says, you just collect all the fertile women and impregnate them. And then the commander's like, no, the wives or Fred is like, the wives, because they're all commanders, presumably. The wives need to be in on this. They need to agree with what's happening and feel invested in it in order for this to work. So he kind of says one thing that isn't totally awful, and then the other man comes back with, no, we'll just have them be a part of the act, and then they'll buy into it. Wives will eat that shit up, or he says something along those lines.
I just can't. It's hard for me to believe that they even let the wives in on the fact that they were literally rounding up other human beings, fertile women, like cattle, to basically imprison them and make them sexual slaves, and that like the wives really knew what was happening in that level. Like they understood that literally we're rounding these people up like cattle. This could have been you, but you can't have babies. I just don't see that happening. The wives also seem terribly miserable in this world. While they're living in a gilded cage, like they also seem to hate things.
No, absolutely.
So I think sometimes in a situation, especially in like fertility type issues, like a lot will be forgiven in the name of continuing the species. And I'm not saying like I feel that way or anything like that. I'm just saying like I guess a lot can be explained away if that means that you can continue a society, or I don't know.
And I don't know, like I feel like in a lot of ways it kind of in a different context sort of comments on like baby mania. If that makes sense. And I'm not a mother. I hope to be one someday. So I'm not bashing moms.
No.
Please.
But like the culture of what it means to be wanting to be a mother, and like and how it's become a marketing tool now for women. So it gets put in, you can look up one thing about a baby and then like all your Pandora ads or everything is like
Target's randomly sending you diaper discounts.
You like click on a pretty engagement ring ad, and then it's like everything you see your boyfriend's looking at you like, oh, I'm like, I looked at one thing, I promise, like I'm not,
it was just pretty.
Just one.
I just clicked on the pretty ad.
And so I think it kind of like it's just a different manifestation of it. Like now the women who are really obsessed with wanting to have a baby and like, they may be having trouble with it, so they talk about it all the time. It's like mommy forums and all this stuff, and you don't feel like an adequate woman if you can't have a baby. Yeah, but now it's just,
and then these people would be experiencing that to such a larger degree because they really can't.
Right, and so
but they don't know why.
Serena Joy's like, sort of craziness when it comes to Offred being pregnant is like just another way of it happening. Totally. She's just like, me accurate. Being a valuable woman in society is having a baby by some means, right? And so I will buy into this so especially I can have that dream.
Society. It's their biological destiny.
Right. So it's like, for whatever it takes for me to get that dream, I'm going to get it. And if it means we're going to run up the women and impregnate them and I'm going to get one, cool, great.
Interesting. That's a really interesting thought. I really had not thought of it that way at all, but that makes a lot of sense. What I was thinking, and like to the extent that I missed part of the next scene because I was really thinking about this conversation made me think about what it must be like to overhear white supremacist conversations and the justifications they give themselves for maintaining the white pure race. Full disclosure for people on the podcast listening, I am multiracial. I am half white and half black. And that's something I've always wondered about because I do hear, in public, people talk about maintaining the purity and they talk about it in kind of the same terms that these men were talking about maintaining the human race. And that just struck me as really extra creepy that this could be like an on steroids version of trying to make the greatest people, the greatest race, because they do a lot in the book. I can't remember if it happens often in the show, but a lot in the book, they kind of talk about like only important people and only select men will be able to have babies. And like in the book, they talk a lot more about that in their eyes, infertile men don't exist. It's all a problem with the women.
Right.
So they assume that all men can have babies, but they only allow certain men to have women to have babies. So it really seemed like a total parallel and added an extra layer of, oh God, to this scene. I don't know. Does that sound totally far-fetched?
No, I mean, there was like a lot of, it was kind of crazy how quickly they all just came to a consensus about like, well, if you do it this way, then
we'll call it the ceremony. They were talking about it for the first time, but they got there real fast.
They got there real fast.
Sure did. That was another scary part of it, just how that conversation went. It was like you were brainstorming the name of your, greeting card company. Like, oh, we'll call it this because my inside joke. But it was like, oh, boom, we'll call it the ceremony. It sounds really religious and
the wives will buy it.
They'll eat that shit up. And okay, good talk. And then they get out of the car. And you're like, ew, that is how a lot of those decisions were made. Gross.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt like a casual conversation that became a really horrible reality for a lot of women.
Also interesting that they were like feigning interest in what the wives would think when clearly their opinion doesn't actually matter in this world. They don't care.
True, but they did.
I feel like they were just putting on airs for each other, except for maybe Commander Waterford, who does seem to genuinely love his wife before all this happens. Like in the
flashbacks.
Yeah, in the flashbacks, he seems to genuinely love his wife and respect her opinion. And like it kind of feels like that must have changed slowly over time as he got like indoctrinated more and more. But the other men, I kind of felt like they were just like putting on airs.
I think it's like the illusion of power, right? Like I think they're like, okay, we have to give them some illusion of power so they buy into this, so they can feel like they have some agency over the situation, even though they don't. So we're gonna tell them this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna like include them in it so they feel okay about it.
Yeah,
and then they have an opportunity to feel like. I mean, look at even the position that the woman is in over the handmaid when the ceremony is performed. She's got some
she's like
power,
looming over her, holding her still
too. So I think that was like their way of giving them something in that, even though they don't care.
Well, and maybe it was their even vague attempt to make their situation slightly less miserable. Like, if our wives aren't super angry with us 100% of the time, maybe this won't be like kind of terrible for us, even though we're getting kind of everything we want. But
sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I just want to ask, like, is sex between the
commanders and their wives? We've speculated on that.
Yeah,
on
just like no
before.
Sex unless it's going to be for procreation.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it doesn't happen, at least for Commander Waterford and his wife, because when they did have sex after the
trade delegation
yes
meeting.
Thank you, the Mexican trade delegation was there and it was very successful and he was excited and she had like saved the day and he was so proud and they did have sex and he said we should stop.
Right. Yeah,
it was implied that this was like not sanctioned sex.
And the one time that she tries to revive him during
he was not into it.
He couldn't she couldn't take him there.
And it kind of felt like in that scene, like he was just not into it. Like he didn't want that to happen.
True.
Rather than like being concerned that it wasn't supposed to, because he could have still gone into the handmaid, like, right. I mean, No pun intended.
Right.
He could have like gone back to the bedroom. Like she was trying to restart things so that they would have a baby.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And he still was not having it. So it seems like that relationship must have really taken a dive.
Yikes. Okay. So, and then Nick's just like, yeah, I guess they shouldn't get attached. And we're like, great, Nick. And then, okay. So yeah, Nick, you get a sense of Nick's involvement in how this went down and where Fred stood in all of this as well. And then he asks Nick's opinion, which you're like, okay. And then, yeah, he says that it's just better for everyone not to get attached. And then,
is this when we get the flashback to the other handmaid?
I don't think so. So even in that scene, it doesn't always seem like Nick's totally bought in, which again would be concerning for me if I was one of the sons of Jacob. Like I'd be like, "Who is this guy? Does he even like
that lives over my garage?
Right, that drives
here's
me
all my
everywhere
secrets
and here's all of these awful things that we."
But they don't know he's an eye.
No,
he's just
they
a
don't.
footman.
I think June is the only one that knows that he's an eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would be suspicious though if I were the commander doing all these things that like I'm not supposed to be doing, and clearly it didn't work out well the last time.
Right.
I would be worried about having
out in the open. Just
your only male servant whose word would be taken as fact.
Yeah.
In the world, in these Gilead courts they have where women aren't allowed to talk. That, yeah, I would be concerned. Wouldn't you be paranoid? If you were doing all these things?
Yeah.
And you're a very high-profile person?
But they're
arrogant.
arrogant.
I don't know. I guess our politicians today aren't very paranoid or careful.
Right, they're arrogant, so that also doesn't help. Well, so no, that was a flashback, and then we come back into what is, like, real time, and it's June walking down the hall of this industrial building, you know, it's this kind of secret pathway into Jezebels, and White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane is playing to kind of give this mood of what clearly,
song.
Great song for this.
And she looks terrified, of course. So they enter what looks like a really dark strip club brothel situation. And she asks the commander, and we're all thinking it, I thought these types of places were banned. This is not what Gilead stands for at all, supposedly. And he says, yeah, you know, we knew they were happening, but we just turned a blind eye. Everyone's human after all. Which is just dripping with,
like, and clearly he is only talking about the men.
Right.
Can I also just say, like, this, and I'm a person of faith, and I grew up Christian, and this particular scene in that moment made my skin crawl.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have had so many Christian men give justification for why they wanted to do certain things, but then wanted me to be a certain way. And I have heard that, I, like, literally heard that shit from a Christian man before. Like,
we're
literally, one sentence, you should be going to church every Sunday, but, like, men have needs, and yeah, I'm gonna need that.
That's for man.
It should have filled you with rage.
Nasty.
Because it certainly did for me. But anyways, we all threw up in our mouths a little bit, and then you kind of pan the scene, and there's just women of all, it seems, shapes and colors. Yeah. And
it was a lot of variety of women, which is interesting because you don't see this wide a variety of types of people in any other roles in society we've seen so far. There have been a couple, Justin pointed out in the OBGYN waiting room, there was a black couple with a baby who obviously must have been in power if they had a handmaid, but like only one. And like we've seen a couple of Asian people here and there, and I think I've seen a couple of Hispanic handmaids, but like for the most part, Gilead is really vanilla.
The racial things, I wonder if it's going to get explained later on or something, but it seems very like just weird. I don't know.
It is weird, I think, mostly because they didn't talk about it.
Right.
Because there were only white people in the book.
Okay.
We talked about that a little bit before, I think. For anybody listening who hasn't read the book, in Gilead in the book, the African Americans were all shipped off to, like, North Dakota or somewhere. Supposedly they're still alive, but really, who knows? The Jews were given a choice to convert or to be shipped back to Israel, and those who were supposed to be sent back to Israel were killed on the journey. There are no gay people that are not out, obviously, but like there for people who were out before. If you were known to be gay, you didn't stay. If they didn't know, then you could have survived. But there's not other types of people in the book world, and I'm really glad they included other kinds of people in the show because it would have been so jarring not to. But I really wish they would have talked about it. And this is another one of those times where, like, confronted with more kinds of people, I was like, oh, cool. Oh, but I don't understand why these people aren't dead.
Yeah. And I also was kind of paying attention. I actually, like, took a lot of time to actually look at the women that were at the brothel. And they had a couple of full-figure women, but for the rest of that scene, they were all stick figure model types.
Well,
and they do talk about that they can have any kind of drugs or alcohol that they want all the time there. They can be on coke all day and all night there.
Yeah.
Like, anything they want.
Well, yeah, but there was that's the first, like, heavier person I've seen in the whole show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was,
like, even Cora is fit. Or Rita.
Yeah, no, they all are. Women aren't supposed to have sugar or alcohol or anything like that. So there's even a giant dog on a leash. Did anybody see that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to point that out.
I heard about that one.
All right.
With a teeny tiny woman holding the leash.
Yeah. And so she asks about what kind of people are here, and he explains only the men, and then she asks, what about the women? And he said it's people who couldn't assimilate. Anybody from lawyers to CEOs. There was a sociology professor he pointed out.
I would have been like, how do I get in that group of non-assimilators? And is there somewhere else you can go?
Well, yeah.
Because he says people who couldn't assimilate as if, like, they just, like, didn't try to really force them into being a handmaid or, a Martha or something. And I was like, I feel like this is another option that maybe they should have talked to people about. Not that this life
everyone
is
was
great.
taking that one, I think.
Not that this life is great, but a lot of people would have chosen that over being a handmaid.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just, like, in their eyes, in the commander's eyes, like, you don't fit into what we consider a handmaid to look like, act like, talk like.
That's a good point.
Or a wife to
their version of assimilation.
Right. It wasn't they were just like, nope. And they were like, Jezebels. It was more like, like,
I wish everybody that's listening to the podcast could have seen your little gestures with that. There was some head swerves on hip action going.
Sassy.
And then he says there's quite a collection. They prefer it here. And then gross.
Yeah, deciding for them that they all prefer it here. That's very like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of spoke to me like how women in power get kind of pushed down. And I don't know, like, of course you wouldn't be a handmaid. Of course you wouldn't be able to be like the upstanding wife because you have too much dignity. Yeah. You have too much of a a personal sense of justice that you couldn't subject yourself to either one of those situations. Like, I sort of saw that and I was like, I would have definitely been a Jezebel because I'd been like, fuck that. Like, at least I have some realm over like what I do in
At least I could control enough that I wouldn't be able to remember the horrible things happening at Jezebels.
This space, I don't know. And it's almost like the kind of conversation around like, feminists and women who are really, really loud. I think our, society and even, situations that in your career, people are always trying to silence the women like that. The women who fall in line, it's like, okay, that's good. We're fine with them. But the ones who are always sort of like raising hell and asking questions are the ones that, like, men feel especially interested in making sure they have nothing else to say.
Well, yeah, I think women who speak out a lot and who work themselves into positions of power by their brains and guts, they're more threatening. That's really threatening to other people in power who are usually dudes. So, yeah, definitely. I'm sure they have a lot more care about keeping them hidden away in some place and where they'll be used for the men's pleasure. But, like, you can't have them out in society talking to other handmaids. No. They might, like, incite ideas.
They would.
Revolution.
Constantly. Yeah. I mean, think about Moira, right?
Yeah.
All of hers out there, she tried. Like,
if where June was so much more passive.
Right. If there were more of those women in that situation, there would be no Gilead, right? Like, it wouldn't work. So they had to extract them as quickly as possible.
That's true.
That's probably why drugs and alcohol are involved, too, because that can kind of...
keep them a little subdued.
Yeah. Right. That can kind of water you down a little bit. I know. So then she sees Moira, and time kind of stops, and Moira walks up in... this kind of see-through shirt and sees her, and then it's kind of understood that they'll meet in the ladies' room. And they do. And first thing, Moira apologizes for leaving her at the train, and they have this, I know, and they have this tearful reunion hug, but then quickly after that, an aunt comes in and tells her that she was in the bathroom too recently and she needs to leave. So they agree to meet in the dorms later. Which is not how it happened in the book. But,
in the book, this whole interaction with Moira happened in the bathroom.
In separate occasions. So they went to the bathroom initially when they first saw each other, and then a couple hours later they see each other in the bathroom again, which is the much more likely scenario of the two between book and show, because in the show she sneaks out later after sleeping with him while he's asleep.
She take the card. I was like, she get the card?
Well,
she get the card, girl.
Yeah, you don't want to have to knock your way back in. But also,
that skimpy little dress thing. I don't think she's got a bra.
Also, if the commander was asleep enough to just sleep through her leaving, how could she just kind of wander through this hotel by herself?
Wouldn't you leave?
I would actually be too scared.
Me too. I would leave anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like I
don't think I would have been able to go back to that room with the commander not having tried to escape. Especially since she knows she's probably out in Boston, like out way farther than she's ever been. Like maybe there's a better chance there. She's not surrounded by houses of lonely wives looking out the window.
I would think any entry and exit to a place like that would be
there's
heavily guarded.
Always some freight exit somewhere that nobody's looking at.
Well, so she talks to Moira though before, and I think that would have deflated anything that
that's true.
So when she talks to Moira, and we'll come back, we'll get to that in a second. So Nick, while she's, Moira leaves the bathroom and there's more to come for that, then it goes over to Nick with a Martha, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like a hotel Martha.
I kind of was not super clear on what was happening there. So
same. I know. I'll try to see if you guys can help clarify that for me. So he gives her pregnancy tests and prescription drugs like Percocet and Vicodin and stuff like that.
And vegetables.
And, basil.
It's like you went to the, pharmacy and farmer's market for her. I don't know.
Get high.
Interesting.
And also eat delicious pesto when you're high. I don't know. So he gives her all this stuff, and I think she gives him alcohol. Is that what it is?
I don't remember what she gives him.
Or whatever.
And then alcohol. He said something about the ladies have to have, or the wives have to have their alcohol or their something.
So he's getting it to be in good with the commander and his wife.
I don't know.
I mean, it would be in his best interest.
And then he says, the eyes thank you for your service, and then she tries to reach in to his pants, and he kind of turns her away. Because you get the sense that, Nick has had to witness Offred and the commander's little date so far.
Clearly he is not happy about.
Yeah.
Yes, and you don't know if he's just, caught feelings for June and he's very jealous. But then later you realize that he's actually just uber concerned for her safety, as he should be. Because this exact same thing, as we know, happened with the previous handmaid. So he sees
the
June,
pattern,
right, going down the exact same path, because the previous handmaid killed herself before anybody else could kill her. It was sort of a preemptive strike. I think
you had a much more generous interpretation of Nick's feelings in this situation than I did. I totally read that as he is concerned because he sees the same things happening with June as happened with the other handmaid, where she then killed herself, and he seemed to be vaguely upset by that. I don't know. He was a little hard to read in the flashback, as he always is. But I kind of felt like he was feeling like, oh, well, maybe, my fun time with June is going to be over soon. I better start pulling away so I'm not really hurt if she kills herself.
Can I say that I think both of these men are misinterpreting June's behaviors and emotions. They are both missing the mark entirely.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hit it.
Because I think the other girl...
The mark.
They're not trying to hit it. Only they are, often. I think they really don't... They're not taking the time to see how June's responding to all this stuff. I think Nick thinks he really likes him. Mm-hmm. I think that Nick thinks that she's falling for the commander and is following after him, but she is so very clearly just complying right now.
Right. To survive.
And I actually believe the other girl, the other handmaid that killed herself, loved the commander. I think they actually had a very caring, not a caring, that was a weird word to say, but they had a relationship. Had a mutual, affection. She felt like he was actually in love with her, is what I'm assuming. Whereas June knows he isn't.
And so you think going to Jezebels pushed her over the edge?
Pushed who over the edge?
The first Offred.
I think she got pushed over the edge because she couldn't have the commander. And she felt when she finally realized that she could not have him as her own, and he was not going to try to change anything about the situation and arrangement they were in, she killed herself because she was in love. That's what I think. Wow. I think she was disappointed, and she saw no way out.
More of a Juliet kill yourself.
Yeah. That's kind of how I interpreted it.
Except of the thing that she carves in the closet, the Latin.
Don't let the bastards grind you down.
Yeah.
But see, to me, it
that
seemed like
could've
it
been
was
at
an
any
inside
time,
joke
though.
between them two. That's what I thought.
Oh.
I felt like it was
because
something
it was
he
actually in his
in a book. I think
Latin
he
dictionary.
Yeah.
right. I think it was
Maybe.
it was like something he shared with her.
He did
And-
immediately know that she had to have been where June picked it up.
Yeah.
So like he knew that she knew that phrase.
So it seemed
I
like he
guess.
shared it with her, and it was like one of their things. Like, don't let him grind you down.
Maybe.
Like,
This is interesting.
we're gonna be
I've not
together.
thought about this.
Don't worry about it. Like we have this like secret phrase between the two of us. You know, that's kind of how I interpret their whole interaction and relationship. So I think she killed herself because she was upset. She was
Very
disappointed,
interesting.
and she was not going to get what she wanted in the end, and that's why she ended her life.
Ooh, so many ways to interpret this.
There's a lot of ambiguity in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the men's faces seem to reveal so much less
Right.
about their internal dialogue and what's happening. So I feel like I don't have a good handle on what Nick or the commander think at least half the time, and what Nick thinks like most of the time, because I really can't tell. Like, is he as dumb as he seems sometimes, or is he just like ignoring stuff
I think
and choosing not to see? I'm just not sure.
I think it's purposely ambiguous, and a lot of the book is a little ambiguous in parts.
Yeah.
So, but either way, after we see kind of Nick not wanting to sleep with Martha, it flashes back to Nick cutting down the hanging handmaid. The previous Offred, and then so you get to see him cutting her down and Rita freaking out at that, and then it shows the actual bringing of the body to what is, I guess, a hearse in their society, and they're all standing on the curb where the van is, and Serena Joy says to Fred, "Well, what did you think was going to happen?"
Yeah.
And
So she obviously
She
knew what
knew.
was happening,
Right.
which just makes you wonder, does she know now?
She has to. Women know.
yeah,
I
She
would think
knows.
so, but she's being kinder to June, and I'm not sure.
Because I think she
What?
thinks she's going to be pregnant. Because she's not dealing with her husband, who is not
Maybe.
I have
putting
no
out,
theories. I have no
Because she assumes
theories.
that she's having more sex.
she's having a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't. I think she probably knows she's sleeping with him. She's like, I'm just trying to get this baby. So y'all can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
Ugh.
I don't need to watch.
Sad
I don't even know
life.
why she watched the first time. I wanted to be like, really? You're going to watch this? Like, what was that about? But that was another episode.
It was a much more personal sex scene. It was a much more
It's true.
personal sexual act. You can tell
Either
Sorry.
way, I was like, leave, Serena. This is weird. Anyway, so the commander asks June so it comes back to regular time, and the commander asks June what she thinks of their little club while stroking her ear tab. Oh my god.
Ugh. Yeah,
Just-
her cattle tag.
Yeah, can we just yeah.
Mm.
And then she's silently weeping, and you assume that they sleep together, and he wants
That
her
she
to
is just less ceremoniously raped.
I was just gonna say she's still pretty much raped, but I think he'd like to think that they're having consensual and somewhat
I
hot
think he-
sex.
yeah.
This
likes to
is
think that
my
all the
thing
time.
about the commander. The commander is not. He's a horrible person, but I think he is actually looking for connection with June.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I think
that
in-
time that he won't, that he is the times that he is angry with her in the office. Every time it's like right after something where he didn't feel like he was getting connection from her.
Right.
Yeah, and so
Kiss
like
me like you mean it.
he wants to be desired by her.
Yeah.
And he's just ignoring the fact that she is not, because like any man can tell right away the way she was acting when he was touching her. He can tell. He knew she was repulsed. You can
I
feel.
would hope so.
You can feel someone's anxiety, and you can feel someone's body when you're that close to
Yeah.
them. It's very clear to him that she does not want it, but he is just trying to convince himself that if he pushes harder, he
Right.
will get some
That he will
response
convince
and
her.
love from her. I think that's really what he's looking for from Offred.
I think you're
that
totally
is
right. Yeah.
Much like Gilead, incredibly misguided. But either way, so then, they don't even show what happens, but you assume, and then she sneaks out into what I'm calling the worst hallway ever. I mean,
It was terrible.
it was on
It
par
was
with the
terrible.
Shining hallway. It was awful. So
Oh.
you hear like these terrible rape noises, and maybe they do like I guess what was a role play of the
Yeah.
handmaid
Making out with
or
a wife.
rape.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's a
Yeah.
wife, and then
And
there's a man,
a lot of people watching.
and and like cheering him on. I don't
Super
know.
weird.
Yeah, I try to forget about that scene, and then a man licking a woman's stump.
Oh yeah,
where
because she had lost a hand earlier
What
when
was
she was
that
presumably
about?
a handmaid or something
and
for a while.
so he's kind of fetishizing her amputation, but amputation, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it was removed
For
because
punishment.
She's
Yeah.
struck out of line. Gross. So, anyways, June finds Moira, and what we get from this scene is basically that Moira has given up all hope for escape, and if Moira is given up, everyone should just give up because she was one of the more fiery people, and she basically just tells her that she needs to go. She gives her the rest of her story of what happened after the train scene, and you get more in the book. It was more fleshed out what happened to Moira in the book, but in this scene she basically just says that they gave her a choice, the colonies or Jezebels, and she chose Jezebels, and she figures, her body will wear out, and then she'll go to the colonies and die or something. And so you just get the sense that Moira is completely deflated, and it just breaks
not
June's
like herself
heart
at all.
Right? Yeah,
She was such a strong character.
no
And
glimpse of old Moira,
like
at
a
all.
force to be reckoned with all the time. She was always like working on a way to get free, and to see her like this, like defeated,
so beaten down.
was so sad.
Yeah.
It was just heartbreaking. And then they hug, which doesn't happen in the book. Moira's much more kind of detached
Yeah.
in the book, which I thought was a little bit more appropriate for the scene and the context. But either way, they have this hug and they say they love each other, which just is just a killer. I mean, it just breaks your heart. And that's pretty much it for Moira in that scene, unless there's something I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
No,
What did you walk away from that scene with?
I sort of felt like, I feel like Moira sometimes just as a person.
I can see that.
I just do.
I can see that.
And
You're a
I
fighter.
think when you have a spirit like Moira, I think Moira has given up to in some capacity, but I think in her mind, in the back of her head, she's like, this is survival, and I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to help other people get out of here. I think she's like, this is the way that I have to deal with the situation right now, but this is the best way for me to make a difference is for me to stay alive. Because I don't think she's like looking to die. I think she's like, can I ride this for as long, like before, can I write this out and maybe there will be an end to it? And if I comply, I can stay alive, and then I can resist. I don't know. Maybe I was just making up a whole lot of hopes and dreams for Moira.
I was gonna say,
because I
don't know.
Her
I
character
love that
resonates
character
with me.
so much.
I know
really
we
hope
don't want to
see
believe
more
that
of her.
Moira is beaten down, but it's not
Yeah,
looking good.
I really hope that Moira's story doesn't turn out like in the book, in the show, because I want more Samira Wiley in my life. She is amazing,
Right.
and she has made this character something that it really wasn't in the book. And it's so much more interesting and deep, and
I feel like the show needs her too.
yeah,
She is a scene
she's
stealer.
So good.
If anybody on that show knows what they're doing, they'll keep her involved in some way. So then the commander says to June, don't worry, I'll get you home before you turn into a pumpkin. And you're just
he's
like,
so cute.
wow.
Dude, shut up.
So gross.
And the coach turns into a pumpkin. FYI, get your stories right.
Yeah, but either way, the tone is all off and just terrible. And so anyways, and then Nick looks worried for her, or looks
Poor
worried
Nick.
at her. Yeah, I know. Poor Nick. And then we flash back then to Nick talking to one of the higher ups of Gilead about so basically he says that one of the higher ups of Gilead basically explains to him that his job is to report on his commander, which is Fred, and they talk about how Fred kind of is responsible for the previous handmaid's suicide, and they hope he has better sense with the next one. So it's all kind of foreshadowing that whatever happened to the previous handmaid is going to happen to June, because Fred clearly doesn't have better sense with this handmaid.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting to find out. This is like the only valuable part of his backstory to me. That it was interesting to find out that he was made an eye specifically to spy on Fred. Because before this, we didn't know who he was supposed to be watching.
Right.
Was it everybody? Was he there to watch the women and make sure that they were staying in line? Was Offred being watched more closely because she had a close relationship with Moira, who we thought escaped? We really didn't know, and everybody, not everybody knows she's an eye, but we know, and June knows. So she has always been thinking it's been dangerous for her mainly, but he's not even there for her.
And didn't Nick report the other guy?
The other guy?
The
The really crass guy in the car.
Oh.
Yeah, he did. That's when he was made an eye,
Yeah.
right?
or was he already an eye, and that just shows what he was doing before he got to the.
I don't know.
Sorry, no, he was talking
he
to
totally
residents.
did.
Yeah, he was talking to the eye people about that man because he's like, oh, he had previous handmaid affairs and he just can't.
And what else did he do?
I didn't catch the other offenses.
What he had to have done something though for him to get caught, because all the men are doing this, right? And they all cover for each other. So why?
Right.
What was it about what he did and who found out about it as to why he was being pulled into that? Because he had this look of terror on his face. I was like, what's going to happen to him? Why is he so freaking terrified?
He says something and I don't remember, guys.
Well, maybe he's terrified because he's seen what happens to other men who F up. They get like handed over to the handmaids after they make them all crazy.
So now Serena Joy comes home from seeing her mom. He asks her how her mom was. She says the same, and you're like dying to know more about this whole mom situation. But she gives
Where is she?
She gives you nothing, and you're like, great. And then they're like really affectionate, which makes you even more sad because you know that the previous night of what he did, and they had kind of reconnected with that sex scene that you mentioned earlier.
It's like all of these times that they make me feel
hopeful,
so sad for Serena. Like I'm half like,
I
don't want to feel bad.
I
for
never
you.
feel bad.
But
for her.
then on scenes like this, I'm like, oh, she doesn't really know.
I know
She does know.
I don't
Makes
think
me
she really
sad.
knows.
Well, she's kind of baby crazy right now, so maybe that's clouding her
I
judgment.
don't know. I apparently didn't experience baby crazy, so I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for that.
I had a little bit of it. I'm not gonna lie. It does cloud
not.
things.
I did not.
So then right after these two, kind of reunite in the front hallway and talk about that, June in the kitchen, which I thought was also a very risky thing that she did, she tries to engage with Nick. And she basically is like, so I'll see you later. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, she keeps trying to ask him and explain why he won't continue sleeping with her. And he's like, he finally is just like,
We're being stupid.
We're going to end up on the wall. And she's like,
I think he's just doing like self-preservation, pulling away now.
because he knows what her fate is.
Yeah, or at least he thinks he does, I think he's just like trying to protect himself, really.
That would be in keeping with his worthlessness, and I think Justin would appreciate that.
Worthless
and then
Nick.
she's just like, is this bullshit life enough for you? What are you going to do? Shine his car and sleep with an occasional handmaid? And he's just like, no, it's too dangerous. You'll end up on the wall. And then she's like, at least someone will remember me or care when I'm gone.
Oh,
and
that part was heartbreaking.
is something. And you kind of feel the same way, or at least I did in that moment. I thought, yeah, that's all you got. That's it.
Yeah,
Go
that
for
is
it.
the best part of her life right now.
Really?
Sadly.
Yeah.
That is the only
I couldn't
fun she
disagree with
gets.
that. I'd probably feel the same way in that specific scenario.
Yeah, I sort of felt like, Nick, you don't even deserve her saying this to you. Like,
No.
Because I felt like his initial reactions were not out of concern. They were out of his own, like I said, fragile masculinity, where he felt like she was falling for the commander and going after that game and leaving him in the dust. And he really was reading her wrong. So I was kind of like, if he had been like, I don't want to talk to her, like, all right, have a nice day, I'm going to get some bread. Like, because he needs her just as much as she needs him.
You are a stronger woman than June.
Yeah. I feel like he needs her just as much as she needs him. And I feel like I would have played the whole like, okay, you mad right now, I'm gonna go upstairs. So he'd be like, oh no, wait. Which is that's basically what he did, right? Like, actually I want to talk to you, I love you. It was like, okay, yeah dummy. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
And then
again, a really risky conversation. Like, I don't buy that this conversation could have been happening like that in the kitchen and nobody caught them.
Especially with Serena Joy just got home. They're in the front hallway, presumably within earshot.
Where's the Martha?
Right?
The
Where's
house is
Rita?
big, though.
You know Rita's
Is it?
in
But
there.
she's always in the kitchen.
She's always
her main
in there.
job is cooking.
Rita,
For
I feel
sure.
like Rita doesn't care though. I feel like Rita's like fine with them.
I don't think she would be fine with that.
To a degree.
I think that's too much. I don't think she'd be fine with that. She's
She's
okay with like the
occasional
occasional
masturbation
little, like, step
in the
over.
bathtub.
Yep. She's down with the bathtub fun. She probably does it too. Come on, be real.
But this drawn out thing with Nick was the whole time I was like, how is this even happening? Just no. And then she's like, I don't even know anything about you. And so he pulls her close and says his full name, Nick Bland. And
of course his name is Nick Blaine.
Right? I know, it's
Blaine.
a perfect name. And he's from Michigan. And as though that says a lot.
I know.
About
Like he
him.
just spilled his darkest secrets.
Like,
You didn't give us
Michigan.
a city.
That deep thing about me that
I'm from
you now
Michigan.
know.
I thought about you when he
Like,
said I'm
Detroit,
from Michigan.
Ypsilanti,
I was
like,
like,
where are you
"Ooh, I hope
from?
you're not from Detroit.
Grand Rapids.
Right? I mean, that's a whole state, dude. That's not anything. But he said it like...
Which peninsula? Come on.
Right?
Nope.
Upper, lower.
Yeah.
He said it like it was the deepest thing to know about him because Nick screws up every interaction with June. And he says he's from Michigan and she says, well, under his eye, Guardian Bland. And then
Guardian Bland. You call him Guardian Bland.
Is it Bland
It's
or
Blaine.
Blaine?
She called him Bland.
Was it?
I
Blaine.
think it's Blaine.
Oh, whoops.
I just
I
like
don't
you
know.
called him Bland.
I didn't take
'cause
notes,
that's
so I'm
exactly
kind of
what
at
he
your
is.
mercy here.
My
but
bad. Okay, well, I'll double check that, but I have no idea. And then
Bland
so
would be
then-
appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
right, and then they're just like, yeah, maybe I just manifested that. I was just like,
You
he's
bland.
so bland to me. He's Nick Vanilla Bland. Like, I don't know.
I
Anyway,
like it.
so then they end the show with Serena giving Offred a music box, which plays Swan Lake when you open it.
Oh, I was trying to figure out
Yeah.
what it was playing.
Yeah, like a child would have,
A whole lot of ice shows
right?
right here.
And then
Michigan.
interestingly, and this is something that stuck out to me immediately when it happened. So she opens up the lid. There's that little thing, that little ballerina dancer spinning, and it plays Swan Lake. And you're like, all right. And then you see a mirror, and then
I thought the same thing.
Right?
She's trusting her with a mirror.
she's entrusting her with a mirror. What is that?
When they're
She
not
could
allowed to have
easily-
mirrors, they're not supposed to care about what they look
No,
like, and
but
also, that
also-
is prime cutting material.
Oh yeah, you could break
You
that
could
mirror
off yourself
I
with
totally
a broken
missed
mirror
that,
so
y'all.
fast.
right in half.
I thought
and
it was
then-
going to be some secret reveal or some kind of message
No,
in
I was
there.
like,
or like
she just gave her a
meet
weapon.
me at 5
What is she
o'clock.
doing?
Totally gave her a weapon, and then through the mirror you see Offred's face doing this forced fake thank you for this
Yeah.
gift, and you're like, okay. And then yeah, and so the scene closes with she explains through the narration that this is a gift of a girl trapped in a box who only dances when someone opens it, and she will not be the girl in that box. So that foreshadows some kind of resistance action thing.
I liked that. I like that metaphor. I've always thought of like every woman in this story, even well before the show, as being trapped in a little cage, and some people just had prettier cages than others.
Mhm.
So I really thought that metaphor was totally apt.
And the Swan Lake thing, because Swan Lake has a lot of elements.
Culture me. I don't know much about Swan Lake. Like I remember the vague story, but that's it.
I don't even know so much the story behind it. When you listen to the song, it's got like a lot of like, it's like soft
It's
and
melancholy.
Like, yeah, at first, and then it like kind of like picks up and is really raucous.
It's very kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
Like it's happy and pretty and sad, and then it's kind of angry. There's a lot of
All
range
the
to it.
like in the a former figure skater, the costumes, a lot of the costumes design, especially there was one season where all the skaters were skating to the song in their competitions and shows, and all of them had these costumes that were like one
Half
side
and
was
half.
black and
One
the other
side
side
was
was white.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
essentially the story of Swan Lake.
Yeah.
So then you see her carving in the closet wall, "You are not alone."
in
And-
English for the next woman.
Right, yeah. And she
I got
says
you.
through the narration that if she's going to tell a story, she has to tell it to someone, even if there's no one, because even when there's no one, there's always someone.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that she's kind of turned away from talking to the prior Offred and is talking to someone
Future
vaguely.
Offred.
But it seems less hopeless now. When she was talking to former Offred before, it seemed a lot less hopeless.
Well, and knowing that there's a second season, I'm getting the sense that here's where it really starts to diverge from the book, and that Offred's story is one of resistance and action and strength, and less of not.
Although they haven't made her very activist in the story thus far. They've
True.
pretty much stayed true to the Offred in the book, who
True.
is like, you know, might dream a little bit of escaping and getting away and finding a better life and finding her husband and daughter, but really, like, Moira is the one that does that and actually attempts and actually tries. You know, even when she fails, she tries again, and that's what we're seeing here. So I'm kind of wondering, like, are we getting away
But this
from
is Elizabeth
Moira?
Moss.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
how is she always developed as a character, or often
That's
developed as a
true.
character?
That's
and had
true.
her
She
face,
could be our,
Peggy.
she
She
could be
had
our,
that
our
cra-
handmaid
she's got
Peggy
that
Olsen.
crazy little face.
One of the
that
best
she does.
characters ever.
You know that crazy face.
Yeah.
I love her. I
Yeah.
love her.
I
to
know.
death. Seriously, like that. And she at the end of that episode, she had that she had that
That's
crazy
true. She had her
Elizabeth face
crazy
on.
determination.
She
Yeah,
did.
this
She's
is
alone
not
in the
over.
closet with the crazy face. I love that
Do you
brought
know
that
Peggy?
up.
I really liked that
Yeah.
takeaway scene with the really deep blood red robes on either side of her, just like very
And her
slightly
foot
moving
kinda, like,
in the wood
twitching,
background. Yeah, and
like,
she was all
that
twitchy, like she
nervous-
couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
And she had the angry determination face from Peggy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was beautifully shot. I really loved that slow backup of the camera.
It was
Great way
a-
to end the show.
It was a gorgeously, well, the whole show is, but particularly this episode was visually really stunning.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
and then, so maybe though, it's not June. that incites, or maybe she's kind of plants the spark and then somebody else takes it and then it becomes a whole different thing in the second season. I don't know.
It might be.
Yeah.
We'll see.
More Moira. That's what I went out of the second season.
That's-
More
yes.
Moira in my life.
Cross our fingers for more and more.
More people of color.
Yeah, no
If
shit.
anyone's listening,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hulu.
please.
More people of color, please. All right. So that was very interesting. I'm so glad you could join us, Crystal.
Yay, fun.
Good.
Awesome.
I'm so glad. And, Sarah's back.
You know.
Maybe forever. So we
Totally
will
spotty.
see you next week for the next episode of The Handmaid's Tale. I hope you enjoyed this show as much as we did, and stick around for the next one. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.